Hi guys, my name's Deb Marnie and I'm from Aussie Maille. Welcome to our chainmail tutorial channel. Hey guys, big hi, hello, welcome, how are you? I'm so pleased to see you here today. Today I'm going to be demonstrating one of the projects from our Maille Club subscription box. If you're interested in more details about this fabulous subscription service, I'll leave a link down in the description section below, so check that out. Today I'm doing a necklace called Electra, and it's using the reverse Teo flower weave with a lot of Swarovski bling in there. Alright guys, let's just get started. Okay, so here's a sample piece of the Electra necklace that we'll be making today. So as you can see, it's made up of the reverse Teo flowers with a sweet little Rivoli capture in the center. So there's quite a few components for this today. So what you're going to need, we're using bright aluminium in 14 gauge AWG, which is 1.6 millimeter diameter wire. You're going to need rings with an ID of 8.5 millimeters, and you'll need a total of 3 of these rings. Also in the 14 gauge, you'll need rings with an ID of 8 millimeters, and you'll need 4 of these. 16 gauge AWG, which is 1.2 millimeter diameter wire, you'll need rings with an ID of 8 millimeters, and you'll need 12 of these rings. Still in 16 gauge, you'll need rings with an ID of 7 millimeters, and you'll need 38 of these rings. Moving along to 18 gauge, which is 1 millimeter diameter wire, rings with an ID of 5.75 millimeters, and you're going to need 38 of these ones as well. And then finally in 18 gauge, rings with a ring ID of 3 millimeters, and you'll need 34 of these rings. For beads and findings, you're going to need a 12 millimeter Swarovski Rivoli or something similar to that. You will also need a Swarovski Baroque pendant. This is the 16 by 11 millimeter pendant. And you'll need some matching 6 millimeter Bicone beads. You'll need 4 of those. Now these beads all have the color coating Electra, which is where the name for the necklace came from. You're also going to need some head pins, or some head pins and some wire as well. What I do is I've got some head pins that are about 7 centimeters in length, and I use the excess wire from the head pins to do some of the work. So if you don't have really long head pins, you might have to grab some extra wire. And you're also going to need a lobster clasp or something for your necklace closure. And of course you're going to need some pre-manufactured chain. This is just some stainless steel Rollo chain. The links are 3 millimeters. And then for the pliers, you're going to need 2 smooth jawed pliers, 2 pairs. I'm using pliers from our Xuron range. This is the chisel nose plier. This is the short nose plier. I'm also going to use round nose pliers and wire cutters to help make the loops. You can use those tools or whatever tool it is you use to make loops in your wire. I'm going to start making our necklace today by making the center piece, the center flower with the Rivoli capture. And to do this, we use 3 of our ring sizes. So we've got the 14 gauge 8.5, 14 gauge 8, and the 16 gauge 8 mils. Now you'll need to close 3 of your 14 gauge 8.5, 4 of the 14 gauge 8, and you'll need to open up 12 of the 16 gauge 8 rings. Okay, so I'm going to call these large, medium and small. I realise they're all fairly large rings, but for the purpose of this particular Teo flower, that's what they'll be. So 8.5 is large, 8 is medium, and 16 gauge 8 will be the small ring. Okay, so we start by taking up 2 of the medium rings, and we're going to place that on to one of our opened smaller rings. Okay, just like this. Now we want to create an orbiting ring out of these rings. So what we're going to do here is we're going to grab this ring here that's on the right side, and we're going to pick it up and bring it up and drop it over the opening in our ring now. Okay, so I'll just show that to you again. So this is our 16 gauge ring, our small ring, our 2 14 gauge 8mm rings, our medium rings, and I'm taking the one on the right, just that one, picking it up, bringing it, when I can pick it up over the opening there like that, just straight over that opening, so that when we drop it down it orbits our rings. Once you've done that, close your 16 gauge ring up and your work should look like this. Okay, now this 14 gauge ring here, this is going to become our center ring. That's where we're going to feed our next rings through. So what we want to do now is we want to pick up another small ring, feed on a medium size ring, and then before closing, feed our small ring through this medium size ring here. Okay, you need to make sure that it's the 14 gauge, not the 16 gauge ring. Okay, so feed it through there, and again we want to create that orbiting ring. So we pick up that new ring that we added, our single loose ring, and we slide that up over our 16 gauge ring and we close that up. Okay, and we want to do that once more now. So we take up another one of our small rings, pop on that medium ring, feed that small ring through our middle ring here. Okay, just like that. Pick up our loose ring, bring it up and through the ring opening, and then once we've done that, we close that up. Okay, so this is what our work looks like now with 3 orbiting rings in place. And what we want to do now is double up our small rings here on the outside. So to do that, just take up another ring and feed it just through that same space there. Okay, you just need to go through that ring that the other one is already sitting through and close it up. Okay, and just work your way around the piece until you have doubled all of the smaller gauged rings up. And now finally one more. And there you are. That's what your work should currently look like, with 3 orbiting rings in place and all of our edge rings doubled up, outside rings. All right, so what we want to do now is we want to take up another one of our small rings, and this time we're using our large rings that we pre-closed. So remember, these are the 8.5 in the 1.6mm wire. Okay, so pop that on to your small ring as we have been, and then what we're going to do, we're going to come back to our piece and we're going to feed our open ring through 2 of these 14 gauge rings that are in the piece here. Okay, so we go through that there like that, and now we want to create another orbiting ring. So we pick up our loose ring, bring it over the top like we have been, and we close that up. Okay, so this is what our work should look like now, and we want to go around our piece and add 2 more of these rings. When we do that, we want to make sure that this small ring here, they all sit on the same side as our center ring there does. Okay, so when you place that, make sure you've got it all sitting on the same side. So again, just take up an opened ring, feed your pre-closed ring onto it, go to the next pair of rings in the sequence, making sure that you place your ring in the same position, either above or below this center ring here, and then create your orbiting ring. Okay, close it up. And then we've got just one more to place. So take up our opened small ring, pop on our pre-closed large. Again, making sure I've got it in the same position as all the others. I go through our final pair of rings, create our orbiting ring, and close our small ring up. Okay, and this is what our work currently looks like. All right, so now we want to take up our Rivoli. So this one is a 12mm Swarovski Rivoli, and we want to pop this into the center of our work. Now we want to put it on the side that is opposite to the center ring that we placed these rings here, these small rings, okay? So at the moment, these are all sitting above the center ring, so I'm going to flip my work over and I'm going to pop my Rivoli straight into there. Now, as it sits, this just pops straight back out, so you do have to hold your Rivoli in place. Now, I prefer to flip this over and work on the back. You may find that is a little bit different for you, but this is what I like to do. So I've flipped my work over, and I'm now going to place our final 3 small rings into the weave. Now to do that, this is the tricky step, okay? We want to place this ring in between these pair of 16 gauge rings here, okay? At the same time that it goes in between these pair, it needs to pick up the 14 gauge ring on this side and the 14 gauge ring on the other side. And in this instance, we want that ring to remain on the same side as our previous horizontal rings are here. So I'm going to call these our horizontal rings. We're adding another horizontal ring in here, and it's going to sit on top of these 2 here on the same side as that center, that all-important center ring in there. Okay, so it sounds a little tricky. I'll show you, and hopefully you'll be able to understand what I mean. All right, so again, as I said, in between these rings here. So to do that, I'm just going to go sort of in between there. Then I'm going to give my ring a twist, and I'm going to feed it through our first 14 gauge ring there. Okay, and I'm going to twist that all the way around. Okay, so when you bring it around, it just naturally follows through and comes through the other 14 gauge ring. So we want to keep bringing it around, and we want it to feed it through our 16 gauge ring here. Okay, and then once you've got it through there, we just need to carefully close that ring up. The Rivoli can still slip out at this stage, so you want to be a little gentle with your joining. If you can't get it spot on, you can always come back later and fix it up. They are a high aspect ratio ring, so they are difficult to close properly at the best of times. All right, so we've got one ring in now, and we want to do that same procedure all the way around. So again, working through the back of the ring, going in between our 16 gauge rings, bringing our ring around so that we can scoop it through the 14 gauge that sits there, moving our piece so our ring feeds through the 14 gauge ring on the other side, and then continuing to bring it around so that it then goes underneath our other 16 gauge in our pair. Okay, and then once you've got that in place, you can close that ring up. So everything's tightening up now. So you want to make sure that you've got your Rivoli and everything sitting correctly. Okay, so now we want to place our last 16 gauge ring. So again, I'm still going to work on the back side of our work. I'm going to insert it between those two rings, go through the one here on the side, twist our ring so it goes through the 14 gauge ring, bring it all the way around so that it pops out through the other side, through the other 14 gauge ring that's there. And then I want it to go also through our 16, the other 16 gauge ring in our pair here. Okay, so slip it in underneath that, and then once I've got that all in place, I can close that ring up. Okay, so now if you aren't happy with some of those connections, now's the time that you can go back and straighten that up a little bit. Try to make them a little bit better. Okay, but that's it. That's your Rivoli capture there. All snug and safe. So you can see, as I was saying, that all these horizontal rings, they're all sitting on the same side as our center ring. You can see our center ring in here, and all our horizontal rings are sitting on the same side. You can do it on the other side. Normally with the reverse Teo flower, you would do it on the other side. It just seems to help the Rivoli sit a little bit better if you do it all on the same side for this one. Okay, so that's your center Rivoli. You only need to do one of those. So put that aside, and we need to create the exact same thing but without the Rivoli for the rest of the flowers. Okay, so we're going to pretty much do the same for the rest of our flowers. I'll show you how to do this in the 16 gauge. So the 16 gauge only uses the one ring size, which is the 7mm. Okay, so here you'll need to close 7 of your rings and open up 12 of them. So once you've done that, again, pop 2 of your pre-closed rings onto one of your opened rings. We're going to create that first orbiting ring by grabbing the ring on the right, bringing it up and over through the opening and dropping it down so it becomes an orbiting ring. We're going to close that ring up. Okay. Grab another open ring, pop on a pre-closed ring, feed that through one of these end rings. Because they're all the same ring size this time, it doesn't matter, so just choose one. Again, we need to create an orbiting ring, so we grab our loose ring, bring it up over the top of the opening, and then drop it down, close that up. Okay, place our final ring on the center ring. So again, take up an open ring, pop on a pre-closed ring, put that through the center ring, grab your loose ring to create your orbiting ring. Okay, just bring it up and drop it through the opening and then close that ring up. Okay, so our work looks like this. We now need to double our outside rings. So to do that, we simply just take up one of our open rings and we feed it through the same path as the one that's already in weave. Okay, nothing too tricky about that at all. So just go ahead and feed the remaining 2 through each section so that all of those rings are doubled up. Okay, one more. Straight through the same path. And we close the rings. Okay, so this is what our work currently looks like. And we need to place now 3 more units off this center piece. So again, pick up one of your opened rings, pop on a pre-closed ring, and we're going to pick up these two center rings here. These ones in the middle here. We're going to go through those, and we're going to create another orbiting ring by grabbing our loose ring, bringing it up, feeding it over the top of the opening so that it then just drops down and orbits those rings. Close that ring up. and repeat 2 more times so that you go through each pair, remembering to stay on the same side of the center ring here as your first one did. So mine's on the top, so I'm just going to go through the top of it again, create my orbiting ring and close that up. Okay, and once more, take an open ring, pop on my final pre-closed ring, making sure I go through the same side of the center ring. I pick up my last pair, create that orbiting ring by grabbing my loose ring and feeding it, oops, through the opening. This one is a little bit trickier because everything's sort of getting in the way now. Okay, well, there we go, finally got it. And then close that up. Okay, so that's what your work currently looks like. Now we're not putting a Rivoli in this time, so we don't need to worry about that. So we just need to replace our final 3 rings. And to do that, we're going to go again through the center, between the center of our pairs of rings, picking up each ring that's either side. Okay, now this time I'm going to do that on the opposite side of our first slot of horizontal rings. So I've moved this so that these horizontal rings are on the bottom and that the new rings are going to go on top of my center ring. I just like to work that way. So again, I'm going to slip my ring between those 2 pairs there, or between that pair, give it a little twist so it goes through the ring there at the side, bring my work all the way around until it pops up, or bring my ring all the way around until it pops up through the ring on the other side there. Make sure that it goes through the second of our pair of rings, okay, so that it sits on the inside of that, forcing them apart. Okay, and once I've got it looking like that, I'm going to close that ring up. Okay, so you can see here, hopefully, that this ring is now sitting underneath the center ring, whereas the other ones are sitting on top of the center ring. It might be a little difficult to see, but I assure you that's what's happening. So now we just need to place the other 2 rings in the same way. So I go to another pair of our rings. I just put this, slip it between, I twist my ring so that I pick up that ring there on the side. Okay, just slipping through that eye just there, if you can see that. Bringing my work all the way around so that I can then slip my ring through the ring on the other side, the matching ring on the other side, okay? And then make sure that when I feed it around, it slips in underneath the other of our pair. And this means that this ring is now sitting inside of that pair of rings, forcing them open. So once I've got that into position, I just now close this ring up. Okay. So we've got just one more ring to place. So between the pair, slip it sideways, pop it through the eye of the ring there just beside it. Bring it all the way around so that it pops up through the ring on the other side of the pair there. Okay. When we continue to feed it around, we want to make sure that it feeds underneath the second ring in our pair that we slipped between, forcing that pair to sit open. And then once we've done that, we want to close this ring up. Okay. And that's it. That's your standard reverse Teo flower unit. So you'll want to do that once more in 16 gauge. And then you want to do it again in the 18 gauge rings, in the 5.75 millimeter ID rings. And you'll need 2 of those flowers. So if you go ahead and finish creating those flowers, and I will meet you back here to show you how to put it all together. Okay, so I'm just going to do the looped wrap on the bicone first. So I've got my head pin. So like I said, my head pin is about 7 centimeters in length. Okay, I'm going to pop on my bicone, which was the 6 millimeter bicone. And then I'm going to take up my short nose pliers. I'm going to put it against the bead like that, snug against the bead, and I'm going to fold that wire back to a 90-degree angle. Okay, and then come in with my round nose pliers. I'm going to slip that into that bend that I've just made there. I'm going to bring that wire all the way back to me, as far as I can get it to go, and then just going to shift my pliers sideways so I can continue to bring that wire all the way around and bring it back out, pointing towards the back. So as you can see, I've created a little bit of a loop there. All right, so what I want to now do is take this remaining tail and carefully wrap that around that neck section that we left there when we placed our short nose pliers. And wrap that around there until I get to the bead, and then I'm going to cut that extra bit off. Now I'm going to use this extra bit, so I'm going to hold on to that. If your head pins aren't as long as that, then you might need to grab another head pin for the next step. But once I've cut that off, I'm just going to give that end a little bit of a squish. Be very careful. We don't want to damage the Swarovskis. They are crystal. They will break if you manhandle them. So be very gentle with your pliers anywhere around your Swarovskis. Okay, so we want to make up 2 of those units. So you go ahead and make up the second unit, and I'll meet you back here to show you how to do our other beaded unit. Okay, so I've got the leftover of my head pin from making the wrapped loop, and it's about 3 centimeters in length, which is more than I need. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to make a bend in my wire at about 7 mils. Okay, we want this to be about 7 mils. I wouldn't go any smaller or bigger. I found 7 mils works for me. So I'm going to put a bend in my wire, 90-degree bend at 7 mils for the tail here, and I'm going to create a loop. So to do that, I'm just going to grab my round jawed pliers, and I'm just going to create a loop with that tail so that it looks like this. Okay, so you may already have a head pin made up. You may have one of those automatic loop makers. However you reach it, that's what we want to achieve. We then want to put our bead on here. So we want to cut our excess wire so that we've got only about 7 mils of wire left from the bead. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Okay, so that's about 7 mils. And I'm just very carefully, because like I said, the Swarovskis can crack, I'm going to very carefully bend that back so that it's got that 90-degree angle, and I'm going to create a loop again on this part. Okay, so just bring that over and create your loop. Now I haven't got my loops lining up, so if you've done the same as me, just grab your pliers and try to make it so that the loops are facing the same way. So plan it a little bit better than what I've done. I didn't plan that very well. But there you go. So there's your beaded loop. That's opened up a little bit when I moved it around, so I'm just going to close that up. You'll need 2 of those as well. So if you go ahead and make up the other one of that, and I'll take you on to the next step. Okay, so once you've got all your components made up and your bead units made up as well, we're just going to now cut the chain to the length that we need. So my piece has 2 pieces of chain at 15 centimeters in length, or about 6 inches, and it also has 2 pieces of chain at 2 centimeters in length, which is heading towards, what's that? I'm not very good with parts of inches here, so a little bit over 3/4 of an inch. I don't know how to say that, so you guys that use inches might have a better idea, but just over 3/4 of an inch in length. You can make these sizes more to suit you, but that was just what I did for my piece. So 2 pieces that are 15 centimeters in length and 2 pieces that are 2 centimeters in length. So if you go ahead now and cut those pieces of chain, and I'll meet you back here and show you how to put all your pieces together now. Okay, so with your 18 gauge 3mm ID, we want to join all our pieces together to form a chain. So we've got our Rivoli in the center, we've got our 16 gauge flowers on either side of that, and then our 18 gauge flowers. So to join them, I've just taken the 3mm ID rings and done a simple 2-1-2 chain. You can do a 2-2-2 chain, whatever you like to join it up. I think the 2 rings give it a slightly better look, but that's up to you. And then I've chosen to join the flowers all in the same point. So with our center flower, I've done the join on either side of that center point up here. Okay, so I've joined it to the 2 petal bits that go underneath, okay? And if you can see that. So here's our center petal, and here are the 2 petals that I've attached it to. You can see they're sitting underneath. When I go to our 16 gauge flower, it's the same thing. The center petal is on the top, the 2 attachment petals are the ones that's underneath, and same for our 18 gauge flower. So do that to join all your 6 pieces together. So once you've got your flowers all joined in a chain like this, we're just going to add our prefab chain to the end. We're going to take one of our 3mm ID rings. We're going to go to the same attachment petal over here, okay, keeping the same attachment pattern. Going to feed that 3mm ring through there, and then before we close, we're going to pop on one of our double looped beaded units. We're going to close that up. I'm going to take up another 3mm ring, feed it through the other loop in our unit, okay, and before we close that up, we take up one of our 15 centimeter pieces of chain and we feed that through there and we close that up. Okay, so we've got an attachment point like that using the Bicone bead, and then on the end of that chain we're going to feed another 3mm ID ring through the end, and before we close that up, we're going to pop on our lobster clasp, okay, and close it. And then you'll want to repeat the same on the other side, only this time leaving off the clasp and just adding a single 3mm ring. Okay, so making sure I've got the right attachment point. Close that up. And it's the same on the other side. As I said, just with the ring to close your clasp onto. Okay, so there it is with the chain added. So we just want to add the embellishments down here now off our centerpiece. So taking up our Swarovski Baroque pendant, we're going to take another 3.0mm ring, feed it through the hole there on our pendant, close that up, take up another opened 3mm ring, feed it through the one that we just added. Now before we close this one up, we want to add both of our 2 centimeter pieces of chain. Okay, so 1, 2, and close that ring up. Okay, so our work looks like this. Now we want to attach this to our center flower. So to do that, we're going to make sure that we've got that chain all nice and straight. Okay, we're going to take up another 3mm ring. We're going to feed it through our end chain, or our end loop in our chain on one of the sides here. Now you will want to make sure that your Baroque pendant is facing the right way, that you haven't got the back, although it is just as pretty, that you've got this facing the correct way. We want to pop on one of our wrapped looped bicones, and then we want to come down here. So we've got the center petal here. We want to go to this petal over here. We're going to feed that opened ring through that petal, close it up. Okay, and we want to do the same on the other side now. So taking up your opened ring, feeding it through your chain and your wrapped loop, and then mirroring the attachment point on the other side of your flower. Okay, so that your work looks like that. Okay, now I've just noticed that I've got this bead here sitting at the back and this bead sitting at the front. You might want to make sure that it's a little bit more symmetrical than that. I'm just going to undo that and pop it in there. If that sort of thing doesn't bother you, then you don't need to pay attention to that. But I'm just going to change that up. Okay. There we go. And there you go, guys. That's your finished Electra necklace. Those absolutely stunning Swarovski Rivoli elements. Okay guys, well that's it. That's our project tutorial today. I hope you really enjoyed it and you have some fun using the new techniques in your own mail. If you did enjoy the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up here at YouTube, share it on your social media, and if you have any comments or questions, leave them below because we'd love to hear from you guys. While you're here on our channel, don't forget to check out all the other videos that we've got here. We've got, at time of recording, in excess of 150 tutorial videos, so I'm sure there's something there that you will like. And last but not least, don't forget to check out our shop link up here in the corner. That's where you can buy all the tools, components, and everything you'll need to make this tutorial and many others. Alright guys, thanks again for coming along and spending some of your time with us, and I hope to catch you again sometime in the very near future. Bye!